What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Sharp Cut from the Iron Edge. I'm Ken Novitsky, and today's topic, this week's topic, silver linings. So, a couple of weeks ago, I had a slight hamstring pull, and nothing too serious. When I first did it, I was like, "Oh shit, this is big." Turns out it wasn't really that big a deal, but there still had to be rehab. There still had to be taking it easy a little bit, all that sort of stuff. So it sort of sucked. Silver lining was that it made me realize that hamstring wasn't firing properly, my glutes weren't firing properly, calves were all fucked up, and basically my entire lower body was sort of out of whack. And we had to then sort of start approaching this and be like, okay, how do we remedy this? How do we stop it from happening long term? Any recurring injuries or recurring issues, and really go to work on some of that stuff and like the small, minute stuff that happens with training, and it's like these little things that you don't really think of, but then they can actually add up, cause an issue, or conversely, they add up and they protect you from an issue. Funny thing is, that was my right leg. I just had a great squat session last week, and for some reason, my left leg's all screwed up. So now we're doing the same process in the left leg, which is very frustrating, if I'm honest with you. But from a silver lining perspective, it's one of these things where I'm like, okay, this is where we're at. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to remedy it? And how are we going to prevent things in the future? And I think that's a big thing for life. I think we started and spoke in this podcast about like pivoting and learn to pivot and how to not sort of get sucked into the negative side of life or the things that happen to us and sort of become um, you know sort of engulfed with displeasure or whatever it may be. Um, And I'm definitely guilty of that. And I'm definitely guilty of not looking at the silver lining in a lot of situations. Very much so in my younger years. And obviously it's very hard at times to find a silver lining in things. You could tell me, oh, well, there's a silver lining in your dad passing. Well, shit, here we are almost 20 years later, still looking for that one. Um, Granted, you could say, well, everything in life has led you to here. I agree with that full heartedly, but it's still a hard thing to accept. So, coming to silver linings, and how do we approach life to look at silver linings a bit more thoroughly or accept them more or be more open to them. I think it's a big defining moment in our lives as humans, that if we can get to the point in our life where, instead of something bad happening and us going, fuck me, like, why did this happen? Or, you know, it's so bad that this happened. Well, what can we do to look at it from a different perspective? And it's the same thing like we've talked about in this podcast before, changing perspectives and really diving in and looking at things a different way. For me, with the hamstring issue, what else is it sort of leading to? What else is it showing me? What is it teaching me? And I think there's a lot of moments in life where we can really be open to that a bit more. Get laid off from work. Okay. What is it teaching me? What is it, leading me to? What's the silver lining there? It's probably going to be very hard in the moment to figure that one out. But as time goes on, you take a step back. Maybe the anger goes down or the fear goes down. Then you can start looking at it from a different perspective. I think silver linings is also one of these situations where it's a sort of count your blessing situation. Like I feel like there's a lot of us who, and maybe it's a society thing. I feel like we get sucked into this, like this thinking or this mindset of that life is like sort of, it's almost out to get us at times. And whether that's, hey, life is really hard because of XYZ reason, or, didn't get this job, relationship fell apart, got injured in a sport, a multitude of things. And it's something that when you really step back and think about it, like, life ain't out to get you. Life is what you make of it. That's my opinion, at least. And obviously, again, it's hard at times to really fully embrace that mindset and that thinking. But it really is, and that's the silver lining thing as well. Like, I can sit here and pick tons of times where, life has been difficult or challenging, and I could sit and say, well, fuck, this really sucks. And it does. But what's it taught me? What's it leading me to? I think a lot of us forget that with hardship comes sort of regrowth and birthing of a new chapter, whether that's a new job or a new relationship or a new sporting endeavor, or even just leveling up in your current sport. We all have to go through things to grow. And I think that's the silver lining of life, that there's so many parts of it which aren't fun. And it gets a bit boring. But it is leading us to something new. Again, touching on the silver lining thing, there's a part of me that does sit and think about how life would have been different. If XYZ hadn't happened, what what would life look like? I don't know. None of us know. And I guess that's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of the silver lining of life as well. That you can sit here and you can say, well, what all would have happened, and the reality is, it didn't. So the silver lining of it is that maybe that is the silver lining, that it didn't happen, that it didn't go the way you planned. It led you to where you are now. It gave you these new experiences. It gave you these new opportunities, and that's the thing we need to look at. I'm very guilty of falling into the mindset of, oh, fuck, I need to do this. Hell, I did it even right now with this podcast. I was sitting on my desk and I'm getting ready to train. I was like, oh shit, I was supposed to film a podcast. I was supposed to film an episode of Shortcut before we go on vacation because I want to keep the content going. Fuck. Okay. It's stressful. I knew roughly what I wanted to talk about, but then you're sort of knocked off kilter a little bit because you're almost thrown into this situation of, oh shit, I gotta get this done now. Gotta get this rolling. But I get to do this. This is the silver lining of my life. I get to come on here and film this podcast, whether it's listen to 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people. It doesn't really matter to me. Actually, let me rephrase that. It does matter to me because I want it to reach people. I want it to impact people. But ultimately, I'm just trying to enjoy what I'm doing. And, the silver lining for it for me is that I get to take this 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and almost step back from everything else that's going on and reorganize my thoughts. That's the silver lining of the podcast for me. There's sometimes where it's super fucking stressful and super, last minute of like, oh crap, I gotta get this done. But I get to take that time away from the desk and emails and whatever it is. And I get to sit here and ramble to you guys. Sometimes it goes well. Sometimes I feel like I'm just rambling. But ultimately, I get to do this. And the biggest thing for me, the biggest silver lining, whether it's the hamstring tear or, being able to do the podcast or some changes in business, is that I get to look at my life in different ways and methods to almost try and fill it as I see fit, if that makes sense. There's times where I can categorically say, I wish work went a different way, but I get to have a really good life and I get to live life on my terms. Yes, it's stressful at times. Yes, I want to, run and hide at times because there is stress. But on the grand scheme of things, the silver lining to everything is that I get to interact with the athletes. I get to interact with the podcast. I get to interact with customers or contest promoters or whatever. I get to basically do and live my passion for strongman. And really, what more can I ask for? This is my silver lining right there. Like, I have so many instances where when I take a step back and I start thinking about it, there's silver linings to everything. And I think that the biggest thing for us all is that we get so stuck in this mindset of have to do this. Oh, fuck, what about that? And we just miss out. And I've said this so many times before. We miss out on so many opportunities to just enjoy life because we're either stuck thinking of the next thing we have to do, or we're stuck thinking that this is a chore versus I get to do this. I'm definitely guilty of it. I know a lot of you are. You can say you're not, but I know you are. Um, so just try and find the silver lining. I know this has been yet another fucking ramble. Um, I come on these things and I sit down like, yep, cool. Here's where I want to be. Here's where I want to go with it all. And then I start talking and defining what really is a silver lining in my life. It opens up like the floodgates of thought, um, because there is a lot for me to be appreciative for, and a lot to sort of look back on and be like, man, you're really doing okay with X, Y, Z. Doing okay with work. You're doing okay with training. Doing okay, with being a dad, I guess, and all these other things. And you could say with even like the father stuff, it's like it took a long time to get there, but the silver lining of it all is that we actually got there. Um, I guess the silver lining is your decept your your perception of it as well. Your like what you decide to be a silver lining. It doesn't have to be anything big, you know. Something like the hamstring. Okay, we open my eyes to different things. Well, something small. Can't even think of anything off the top of my head. Something small can be a silver lining to anybody. And I think once you start seeing the silver linings and appreciating the silver linings of life or of a task or of a situation, then we can actually start appreciating and enjoying it all more too. And with that, I'm going on vacation a couple of days. I'm going to sit and think about better topics. I'm going to sit and think about putting my thoughts out there better for you guys. And I know I ramble. I know I get caught on my words. I know I get caught on my thoughts and my head jumbles up. I thank you all for sticking with me. I'm excited to keep doing this and keep putting some content out. I know some stuff recently has hit with people. Hopefully something else in the future will as well. And I'll catch you in the next one.